show them what you can do. You make this parade a mere charade if you're marching just for fun. Our troops must feel your thanks for real before the marching is done. They know side by side you can match their stride to the drum beat and the brass, but they're not impressed with you unless you can match their stride in class. This may not sound too diplomatic, but I cannot be more emphatic as I tell you, it's problematic when you do less than your best. Especially when it's because you put your brilliance on pause for the mere peer applause it draws from a so-called friend doing less. Quit playing, I'm saying, you know that you are great, and we know it, so show it. Don't make our heroes wait. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. For those of you who already do the things that make us proud, your nation in appreciation says thanks to you out loud. Your schoolmates should imitate the way you tap your potential. Let me try to convince them why their effort is essential. Our men and women in uniform, before, during, and after Desert Storm, always perform above the norm, anywhere and everywhere on the planet. They need to follow our heroes' lead, but they cannot lead if they cannot read. Allow me, please, to plant this seed. Don't take freedom for granted. I'm serious, I'm furious to see U.S. schools behind. Remove the clatter, it's just a matter of our making up our minds. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. We believe in you, warriors protect you to do what you must to rise. Please do your part. Please start before another warrior dies. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. They sacrifice for you. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. Please.
Good afternoon and welcome to Wave Your Grades on KUAW.org, the academic patriotism program that is dedicated to veterans and serious secondary scholars. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now, here is our host, civilian urban educator, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much, DeQuay Wilson, who is our producer, engineer, and co-host. My name is Carl Boyd, and this is a particularly gratifying hour here on Saturday, March 23rd, because I get an opportunity to have a conversation with a gentleman, DeQuay. I've only known him for a little better than 60 years. Can you imagine how seldom there is the opportunity to speak someone who really knows you? So you have to be careful about being very truthful. And my dear brother, Reverend Dr. Bishop Edward Joseph, thank you very much for being on Wave Your Grades with us this afternoon. Welcome.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Good.
I am having difficulty hearing my dear brother. Maybe I'll need the earphones or turn up the volume. All right. Excuse me. Yes. Yeah. Now, once
Can you hear me
again,
now?
I can hear you much better now.
Oh, good, good. Aloha and good morning to you, or afternoon where you are.
Absolutely. I was trying to pronounce Kapaloa, or what is that
Kapolei.
name?
Kapolei.
Kapolei is the way to pronounce it.
Kapolei.
Kapolei.
Kap. Yeah.
All right. Now, that's interesting that you said that.
That's correct.
Now, Brother Edward Joseph, we could spend much time discussing time together at Lindblom High School in Chicago, Illinois, west of Ashland Avenue, and enjoy recalling some of the people with whom we matriculated back in the 1960s, actually 50s and 60s. But please allow me, if you will, these are only very brief excerpts, but a couple of things that I wrote down, and I will ask for your explanation of these. As I said, a retired private investigator, and number two, Mrs. King. Yes, that Mrs. King extended an invitation regarding the Martin Luther King Jr. Federal Holiday Commission, and we're talking about the 1990s. Before I go back to revisit it, also the National Law Enforcement Involvement Committee, Palm Springs Youth and Parent Commission, and Speaker, 30th anniversary of the March on Washington in 1993. My Lord, there is more, but I would like for Edward Joseph to start where Edward Joseph would like to start. Would that be things going on contemporarily or taking us back in history?
Well, right now, my life changed when I moved to Palm Springs, California, and my life changed with the Lord. Um, I
And
always believed in God, but
yes.
I never really knew about Jesus, and so I think that's where my journey began. When I first moved to Palm Springs, I moved there to escape the violence that was so prevalent in South Central Los Angeles. Several young men who had been in my house or in my car or on a camping trip lost their lives through
Oh no.
violence, gunshots, and so forth.
Wow.
And so when I moved to Palm Springs, my main prayer at that time was to asking God to save my youngest son's life. And I made a promise once I realized that he had saved his life. I made a promise to God that I was going to serve, not knowing that God didn't need my service. But as a result of serving and as a result of becoming affiliated with Martin Luther King Jr., his principles of nonviolent social change, as a result of meeting people who were on the Federal Holiday Commission, I found that there were a lot of caring people in this world. There were a lot of good people, and so that's where my journey began. We lived in Palm Springs for 16 years,
Oh,
and then
okay.
I came to Hawaii in 2001. As a private investigator, I was looking for a missing person, and I was here when the World Trade Center happened.
Oh, okay.
And when that happened, it was on a Tuesday. Everything was shut down, and I couldn't catch a flight to go out. I had found the person I was looking for, but I couldn't catch a flight to go out. And so I just made it a point to go and to visit stores, visit the post office, talk with people, ride the buses. And I saw a great difference in how the people of Hawaii responded compared to how they responded on the pardon me, on the mainland. There was much empathy and love. There were many tears and crying. And when I finally did get out, I left Oahu to go to the Big Island of Hawaii, and I found that it was the same way with the people on the Big Island. And I learned that aloha was not just a cliche, but it was a way of life. I was so impressed with Hawaii that when I returned to Palm Springs, when I got off the plane, I told my wife, we're going to move to Hawaii.
Mm.
And of course, she looked at me like I was crazy or something. But we had family. We have family in Palm Springs. We have 4 children. We owned a house. Had so much going. I was well recognized in Palm Springs, but I honestly believe that God sent me here. And so I met with my pastor in Palm Springs for 3 years. We had breakfast meetings, and I told him I didn't want to come to Hawaii just for the beauty of the island or for a different lifestyle, but I really believed that God was sending me here.
Yes, sir.
And so it took us 3 years. We sold our house. We gave our children their inheritance then, and we came here to Hawaii with nothing but our clothes. This year marks the 20th year that we have been living on the island of Oahu, and I have not regretted not one day.
That is outstanding. And as a matter of fact, I moved from Chicago in 1980, from Chicago to Kansas City. And the difference between the south side of Chicago and where I moved here in the greater Kansas City community was different, but there was not a stark difference. However, I would get what I'm sure you must have gotten a few times, someone saying, man, if you're from the south side of Chicago, this has to be slow for you, or this has to be so different for you. But is there anything about the Hawaiian experience that reminds you of the south side of Chicago? Or have you heard that exclamation more often than I have here in Kansas City, Missouri?
I don't see too many differences. I
Okay.
mean, well, there are. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Excuse me. I was wrong. There are a lot of differences. It's like night and day. For one thing, there's more civility here. Um, sure, we do have some crime. When I first came here, people asked me and said, "Is there much gang violence in Hawaii?" And there's not. Um, I used to say that they don't use guns here. You might get hit in the head with a baseball bat, but it's not a lot of shooting or anything.
Yeah.
But this thing of aloha, it's the people that make Hawaii Hawaii. It's not just the beautiful trees and flowers and uh, rainbows that we see constantly. It's the people. It's the attitude of the people. When I first came here, of course, I was like, "Oh, I see. They're nice because their economy is built on tourism." But I soon learned that that was not the case. That it's a culture here.
Yes,
And
sir.
when I came here with the attitude of I was an uninvited guest, and I came here not to try to change to make anything like it was on the mainland land, but that I was going to embrace the Hawaiian culture, and that's what my wife and I have done.
This is very intriguing to me, and I'll tell you why in the question, as I would like to take you back to indeed the 1960s, and let me suggest to you that I have been blessed to keep in touch with Retta and Dolores Strickland. Retta Taylor now, Dolores Dearborn now. And in one recent conversation, she mentioned the Pelts, Audrey and Alba,
Oh yeah,
and being the daughters of one of the most prominent preachers in our community, they would be proud of you now. But I want to I want to draw a contrast and ask Brother Edward Joseph to bring us forward. But in our day, when we were in attendance at Lindblom High School, race was an issue. And I would like to bring us from there up to your, in fact, meeting Coretta Scott King. But take us back, Edward Joseph, to how you recall our time, 50s and 60s, matriculating west of Ashland Avenue in Chicago, Illinois.
Well, I think that on the race issue, it really began with me with the killing of not Medgar Evers,
Emmett Till.
Emmett Till. That shook me up.
Yes, sir.
Emmett was 2 years, I think, 2 years older than me. And from then on, I was always cautious about where I was and who was around me. It's ironic, though, that I would come to Lindblom High School. I grew up in Inglewood. I was in the Inglewood High School district. I went to Inglewood for a year and I played basketball there. But my mother built a house out south of 97th and Prairie.
Yes, sir.
It was just starting to become integrated neighborhoods out there. And so I was in a new school district, and the school that they was right a couple of blocks from our house, Harlan High School,
Harlan.
they didn't have a basketball team.
Uh-oh.
And so the coach at Lindblom knew Kenneth Hennings, my best friend. You see, we were separated. We went to grade school together, but we were separated after graduation because Kenneth was in the Lindblom district and I was in the Inglewood district. But the coach had invited Kenneth to come over to the school, to the basketball, and I went with him for like a tryout. And the coach called my mother and asked her to allow me to come to Lindblom. So my mother, of course, was very concerned because we knew that there was trouble anywhere on the west side of Loomis Boulevard. But she, because I wanted to play basketball so much, she let me come and play ball.
Coach Gus
Some
Jones.
of the things, Coach Gus Jones. Gus Jones had that, I have it now, it's called a trigger finger.
Yes, sir.
And when you get in the huddle, Coach Jones would put his hand up there and that finger would be right there, you know. But it was a funny situation. Can you imagine playing on a basketball team with your teammates and never having lunch together in the lunchroom, never having a conversation? Can you imagine going to school for 2 years and cannot remember not one of your classmates' name, white classmates' name? It's almost like you were invisible, but for the fact that I played basketball. I can remember one time I was accosted by some boys by the school store. And these were guys who weren't in school, but they hung out there. They were the type of guys that it would be 20 degrees outside and they would just have a T-shirt on with a pack of cigarettes rolled up on the sleeve of the T-shirt and a comb in their hair. They accosted me and all of a sudden a voice came on and said, "Hey, no, he's on the basketball team." And so I got a pass. So most of the black students, I think at that time they said there were like 3,000 students and only 79 black students. And so after school, black students had to hightail it home. You couldn't linger around. You couldn't join any clubs, high school clubs or anything like that. I never went to my prom. I didn't go to my graduation. No. In fact, we had a basketball game at the Copernicus Playground the day of the prom, and we didn't go. So like I said, you played ball. The team that I played with, the white guys on the team, we were a team when we were at practice. We were a team at the game. We fought tough. We weren't always the best team, but we were good. But after the game, everybody went their separate ways. So high school wasn't a good experience. I never saw a counselor while I was in high school. I never had anyone come to me to talk to me about my grades. So often I was absent from class, but I was excused because I was an athlete. And I paid the price for that later on in life. I wasn't prepared when I went to college. I had to take remedial reading courses. So I almost didn't get out of high school. I say I didn't go to high school. They pushed me through high school. And so, sorry for that noise.
That's quite all
But
right. That's
you
quite all
know,
right.
sometimes it takes reaching this age to be able to look back and to define these things. So, as I prepared for this interview and I thought about my time at the high school, it was like I was invisible in class. Most of the problems came outside the school. Uh, Nobody bothered me in classes or anything, but it was like I was almost invisible. Like I said, I cannot remember not one student's name in 2 years.
Now,
um,
go ahead, please.
um, the black students were isolated, and on the north end of the school, there was a entrance door there, and the black students kind of hung out there.
Hmm.
There was a dip in the road though, and when it rained, it would fill up with water. And the white guys would come by in the car, and splash the water up on us. And,
Hmm.
there would be a problem whenever they didn't have Black History Month, they had Brotherhood Week. And it would be always a problem during Brotherhood Week. When we played, we were in a league where we had to play schools like Kelly, uh, St. Harper,
Harper. Hmm.
Gage Park, those schools. We played, we were the brunt of a lot of words that came our way. After the game, our teammates left, and Kenneth and we were on our own. We had to get out. Sometimes we had to run. Uh, my mother my mother bought me a car so that we could wouldn't have to do that.
Yes, sir.
And we didn't go to the game together. There was no team bus. There was nothing like that. You got to the game the best way you could. And so Kenneth and I would ride. My mother bought me a Renault 4CV, small little car. I don't know if you remember it or not, Carl.
Yes, sir.
But Kenneth and I used to go to the games all the time together.
Well, let me ask,
So go ahead.
were you at Lindblom in 1958? I think you were.
59.
Oh,
No, 59. I
you
came there in 59.
in 59. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
I graduated in 57. I went to
oh, that's right.
Inglewood.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then I was at Harlem. Yeah.
I see. It's interesting, and I'm glad that my wife is looking at this program because she's getting a little bit of my history. And a couple of years ago, you know Byron Lagarde,
Yes, I do.
had the opportunity to hook up with Byron Lagarde, and I was on the telephone. Now, this is a couple of years ago, so we're talking 50 years later. And I said, Byron, you know what? I haven't seen anybody, I've not gone to a Lindblom reunion.
Yeah.
And he thought that was a little amusing. Of course, his response was, Carl, none of us go to the Lindblom reunion.
Yeah.
And it was what you're saying is interesting to me because a lot of people who did not go to Lindblom High School that would not understand the significance of October 15th. But I made the basketball team because October 15th was tryout day. And I wasn't a basketball player, but all the brothers went to tryout day so we could go home together and be safe. And I tried out in my socks. I didn't have any Converse at that time. And Coach Jones let me come back. So I had an opportunity to play basketball with George Wilson. I was not starring on the team, and Coach Jones used to beg me to ask Charles Wiley to come and try out, but Charles wouldn't do it. But I'm saying that to say that we had occasions where indeed football players in Lindblom jackets would come up after us after practice with pipes, bricks, and chains. And Harry F. Yates, our principal, would say that must have been somebody from some other school. But at any rate, you and I could engage a very lengthy conversation about race relations, even where we went to school and in the surrounding community. But
let me point out one thing that you mentioned about reunion. So most of the black students at Lindblom High School came from Copernicus
that's right.
Elementary School.
That's right.
So we didn't have reunion, Lindblom reunion, but Copernicus is the only school that I know of, grade school, that had a reunion.
Wow.
That got together. Copernicus was an all-black elementary school with only two black teachers. One was Mrs. Maurice Haynes, who is still with us, and the other was Mrs. McFarland. She was the librarian. And so Inglewood, Copernicus, that whole neighborhood is pretty close neighborhood. And like I said, there's a couple of people have written tributes to the students and so forth of Copernicus. So
yes, sir.
We didn't make the Lindblom, but Copernicus and that neighborhood is always dear to us. That's where I really learned how to play basketball too.
Absolutely, and that's interesting. I will mention this. We'll go to a break and come back, but let me mention George Wilson. Now, not George Wilson who played for Marshall with Bobby Jones, but the George Wilson who was at Lindblom High School, and he and I were in ROTC together. And there was a drill hall for those of us who were in ROTC. I was not familiar with something that you came upon later because I started at Lindblom in 1955. And I was in the drill hall, and we had a competition platoon that started at 7:30, so I was in school early. George Wilson came in, who was also in ROTC, and he sat next to me and looked around and said, "That's two of us." So I said, "Two? What's going on, two of us?" And he said, "Have you seen anybody else?" I said, "What do you mean, anybody?" And he said, "Oh, you didn't know about Brotherhood Week?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess this is Brotherhood Week." And he said, there are parents lined up on the street who brought their young people to school anticipating the race riot that was going to break out because it was an annual ritual at Lindblom High School.
Yeah.
Now, let me do something, if you would, please. DeQuay Wilson is our engineer. She's going to take us to a break. Please stay through the break because there are some things more substantial that you have done that I want to broach because it's too much fun talking about when we were together in high school. You've done some very significant things since then. So here is DeQuay Wilson, and we will be back.
It is time to remind our 7th through 8th grade students that you can win a monetary award from our sponsoring organization. Yes, we do say organization on purpose, with purpose, Suits for Boots. Your essay title will be Heroes You Didn't Know Were Heroes. Your content will identify a veteran at your school who can be absolutely anyone, a teacher, custodian, coach, cafeteria worker, absolutely anyone. If your essay is chosen and submitted by an adult who gives you permission to read it on this Waive Your Grades program, you will be awarded a monetary prize. Please send entry or inquiry to stootsforboots@gmail.com. That is stootsforboots@gmail.com, stootsforboots@gmail.com. Before I turn it back over to Carl, I just want to say I'm sitting here amazed at listening to your conversation. You know, starting school in the very late 70s, going to school through the 80s and early 90s, like I can't even wrap my mind around the experiences that you guys are talking about. Like, this conversation just literally blows my mind.
Wow.
With that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to our host, Carl Boyd.
Now, Brother Eddie Joe or Edward Joseph, DeQuay Wilson, is referred to as producer, engineer, announcer, and co-host, but there's so much more to her. So please, DeQuay, feel free to come in at any time. And Edward Joseph, as indeed I was talking about going back into subsequent life after Lynn Bloom, and it is always difficult for me to say this, but you mentioned, I think, one of your sons, but DeQuay Wilson, who is on this program guiding us every week, lost her son to homicide. And I think that was 2013. But please go ahead, DeQuay.
2010.
2010. And as we do move forward, she has been strong for all of us since 2010. So back to Edward Joseph, even with that in mind, how is it, as we reflect on the 50s, that you got into law enforcement and helping to reduce violence beyond Chicago, Palm Springs, California, and I'm sure beyond that?
Well, I wasn't law enforcement. It started in 1967. I got married in 1965, and I moved back to Chicago from Los Angeles, and I got a phone call from a teammate at George Williams College, and he was a headhunter, and
Wow.
so he called me up and he said, "Say, hey, Eddie," he said, "would you be interested in a job? You have a briefcase, shirt and tie, expense account, and a company car." So let me see what should I say, you know? And I said, of course. And so it got me into the insurance industry.
Oh, okay.
As an investigator, and I started out with Great American Insurance, not Great American, insurance company of Zurich American Insurance Company, down on Jackson Street in Chicago. And it was at that time, blacks were starting to get jobs. One of the reasons that I was hired was not because of any altruistic motive or anything, but many of the white investigators could not go in certain neighborhoods. And so they kind of they had to bring somebody along, you know. And I believe because I was light skinned, also helped me get that job. It was non-threatening and so forth. And I remember the vice president calling me into the office, and they were going to send me to Louisville, Kentucky for training. And now this is in 1967.
Yes, sir.
Uh, 67, there was so much going on. There was so much violence going
Without
on.
a doubt.
There were uprisings everywhere in
That's
all
right.
the cities. So he wanted to reassure me that he had checked and everything would be okay for me. And so they put me in a hotel, and I started my class, and maybe there was about 15 other uh, people going through training. I was the only brother. And that Friday, all the guys were going to go to have a beer. And I'll never forget this guy. He was from Pontiac, Michigan. He came over to me and he said, "Hey man, I know you can't go with us. Here's the keys to my car if you wanna do anything." And so he was nice enough to give me the keys to his car. And when I went to we had our meals at they had set up an account at the cafeteria for me across the street from the hotel. And black young lady was serving me, and I kind of spoke to her on the side and said, what's going on? Where can I go? And so she told me of a party, and I went and I had the best time I wanted to have there. But it just showed that things were not all right. But I stayed in Chicago. My wife didn't care for Chicago. We came back to California, and so while she came back first, and I was still working, and I took a job at the Ogden YMCA, Ogden Park. I was on the weekend. I had the gym, and people would come over there and play basketball and
Yes.
everything. And I noticed though that some of the kids were coming around with weapons and whatnot. Now they respected me because
Yes.
I played ball. I got a
Yes.
lot of passes because I played ball, and but I knew that wasn't a place for me to raise my son, and so we came back to sent my wife back to California. In the meantime, I'm working these two jobs, and I didn't even know how to write a resume. But I met a young girl who had graduated from Alcorn State, and she said, "I'll write one for you." And so I sent resumes to California to insurance companies, and only one insurance company responded. And they said, in essence, they said, "We're not going to send for you, but if you get this far, look us up." And I got that far. I looked them up, and I got hired on the spot. So that's how I got into the insurance industry.
Yes, sir.
But then an ugly thing happened. I was working for one company, and this is during Angela Davis time,
Yes, sir.
and I had a free Angela Davis button on,
Mm-hmm.
and we had this meeting, and the person running the meeting wanted the investigators, when they went to someone's home, to ask to use the bathroom and to go in and open up the medicine cabinet and take the names of doctors. And so I said, no, I'm not gonna do that. I said, all the people the territory I have are all my people, and I'm not gonna do that. Well, that Friday, I got my termination.
Man.
So it got me out of the industry, and
Yes.
then I couldn't get back. I couldn't get back in the industry, and so even a headhunter, I called up about a job, and he he,
Yes.
he assured me that my qualifications were there and everything. But when I went to see him, the job was filled. And then he was just truthful with me. He said, "I can't handle you. The industry is, that's how I make my money from these people. I can't handle you." So that started it there. And then my brother um, passed the bar and opened up a law office. So I became the
In bed.
the investigator for them, and I
Hmm.
handled the personal injury cases and things like that. So uh, I
Now,
suffered a lot, man, but I wouldn't trade the times that
yes, sir.
I had, being able to see my children go to school, to take them to school, to attend the plays or any of their activities and whatnot. I was in the field all the time, and I
Well,
enjoyed that.
something that you said um, helps me to introduce my question to you in this way. You were talking about young people and weapons. And for those who can see the colors that we are wearing, but perhaps cannot read under our coat of arms, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. And we both made the fraternity in Iota chapter. Mine was February 18th, 1961 at 2:44 p.m. And the reason I mention fraternity is because our fraternity had a softball team. Among the people who were on the softball team was George Wilson. George Wilson was working um, in the with the Park District, 64th and Stony Island. What was the park? But at any rate, he worked
Jackson,
closely. I'm sorry,
Jackson Park.
Jackson Park, and he worked
Yeah.
closely with Jeff Ford, Ben Bay, the main 21 Blackstone Rangers. Our fraternity, at my invitation to Stateway Gardens, played ball against my group. My guys were the Delphi Kings, and then there were the Blackstone Rangers, the Four Corners, the Egyptian Cobras, Vice
Mm,
Lords, all of these guys in Chicago. Now Eddie Joseph goes to Freddie Williams' territory, not the actor, but one of the founders of the Crips, and there were the Crips and Bloods on the West Coast. So kind of tie that together for me, and I'll tell you why, putting it in context. I say to people now, as we work with young people, that it was hard for us to imagine somebody in our day, as bad as the gangs suggested that they were. You were talking about Inglewood High School, East Side Disciples, Larry Hooper. But you could not imagine a 13-year-old with an AK 47.
yeah,
Not only
yeah.
that, if they were going to play at Jackson Park, they would come to Mr. Wilson and they would say they packing or they're not, but they would put up their weapons. Contrast where we grew up, how we grew up, the young people with whom we worked, and Eddie Joseph now being on the West Coast, and how your work in law enforcement and reduction of violence accelerated.
Well, that all began with, like I said, a changed life. When I moved to Palm Springs, I went to the Martin Luther King holiday
Thank you.
uh, celebration. So the holiday began in 1983. I went to move to Palm Springs in 1988,
Oh, okay.
and so I just casually just happened to ask why the city of Palm Springs didn't honor Dr. King with a paid holiday, and the city manager sent word back to me that it comes up every year and it goes away every year,
My Lord.
and so and so I went to the library, and the librarian helped me to locate the Federal Holiday Commission. I had no idea that there was a Federal Holiday Commission. I didn't know anything about the holiday. I didn't know anything about Dr. King other than his name. And so I called them, and they invited me to come to a planning conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Wow.
I then, by then, Sonny Bono had appointed me to be a commissioner in the city of Palm Springs. And so I had access to the council. And I went before the council and I told them that I saw some signs of things that were coming to Palm Springs from uh, the Los Angeles area, gang violence and so forth. And I suggested that we align ourselves with uh, people that are working against uh, violence.
Yes, sir.
And so the city council appointed me to represent them at this planning conference. And it was at this conference when I first met Coretta King.
Yes, sir.
And then there was a youth assembly after that. And I took a young man from Palm Springs. And Mrs. King was so impressed that I brought this young man from Palm Springs, not one of my children, but someone else's child, and so forth. And so she invited me to be a member of the Federal Holiday Commission. She wrote Sonny Bono and asked him to ask the city of Palm Springs to fund my activities and for me to be a member. One interesting thing, you mentioned the fraternity. There was a man by the name of Edward Horn, who was a supervising FBI agent who was on loan to the Federal Holiday Commission, who happens to be a member of Kappa Alpha Psi.
Yes, sir.
And so I didn't know this until one day I had my lapel pin on and we noticed, and then we became very close together. So from that, I went to workshops and I learned about Dr. King, his philosophy. You know, today the media, in my opinion, the media describes Dr. King as a civil rights leader. He's so much more than a civil rights movement.
Thank you.
Dr. King was a man of God.
Yes.
Dr. King, the civil rights movement, the success of the civil rights movement came through Christianity, through the love that your hatred, my love will overcome your hatred.
Yes, sir.
You know, and King was successful with the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yes, indeed.
And after that, Dr. King had to catch up with the young people in Carolina who sat in at the lunch counters and the abuse that they received. And then those young people, the Freedom Riders, SNCC, these organizations came up. And so I felt in 1993 that I missed all of that in the 60s. I wasn't involved in anything. I wasn't the person I am now. I was more about fun. Jazz, girls, and basketball were my main interests.
Yes, sir.
Not school. I wasn't a good student or anything like that, but it changed my life, man.
I understand. Are you saying that you knew something about Miss Alpha Rho and Miss Iota and Miss Kappa Alpha Psi after the Thanksgiving dance and all of that?
All of that, man. I even have a picture of, we had a big debate on whether or not we were going to have this Thanksgiving because John F. Kennedy had just been assassinated.
Okay.
And so the debate in
63.
the fraternity was, should we go through with this or not?
Mm-hmm.
And we elected to go through with this.
Yes.
The fraternity was so good. You know, it taught us as young men. Here, young guys were signing contracts with a hotel to have a party.
That's right.
Young men were signing a contract. In Chicago, you couldn't have a DJ. You had to have a band. We were signing contracts with bands, you know. And so we learned a lot. Robert's Rules of Order.
That's right.
The history of our fraternity. Our fraternity was really started Indiana University.
Yes.
The men who started our fraternity there, they could not participate in any activity at the University of Indiana other than sports. And the only sport they allowed them to participate in was track because it didn't involve touching.
Wow.
You know, so, but back to the youth and whatnot. So I was on the National Law Enforcement Involvement Committee, and we gave seminars throughout the country uh, where we would have. It was set up that the children would come. Uh, they would there would be a speaker, and then the microphone was given to the children. They would come up one at a time and tell us
Outstanding.
what they were was on their mind. And one thing I learned is that our children are more aware of us than we are of them.
Thank you very much.
They watch us
Absolutely.
more. They know when we're fudging. They know when this
Yes,
is
sir.
wrong. And about Hawaii, let me say this: back in the day before, this is before, when we had parties, the children, you go in over there in that room over there.
Right.
Children would, you stayed over there. When I came to Hawaii, children were everywhere at the party.
Wow.
There is no special room,
Yes.
where we would go to do whatever we were doing. It was so different here.
Wow.
Ohana, family here.
Well, I
So go ahead.
I was going to say I regret that we're coming so close to the end of the hour because this is, as the cliche goes, just getting good. But I will have just one or two quick questions after you finish your thought. Please go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank you, Carl. It's so nice to see you after
Oh,
all of these years, man. And I've always admired you. And for your audience that does not know, please ask Carl to sing for you sometime. Carl has the most recognizable voice. I can remember in 1957, I was at Inglewood High School, and
uh-oh.
Carl came over to one of our assemblies, and oh, the girls were just swooning over him, and oh, that's my friend. So, but I thank you for having me on. It's important. You don't know what you really feel until you have to say it or write it. And so at this time in
Oh,
my life,
yes.
I'm doing some writing, and this has given me an opportunity to express things that are on my mind that I've never had the audience like I have today. And I just thank you. I appreciate you. I love you, my brother.
Thank you so very, very much. And back at you. It is absolutely reciprocal in so many different ways. And I'm so glad that you mentioned your writing because while I don't feel that I have to have an excuse, but I would certainly want to follow up with what you are doing, what you are writing, and I would like to get an opportunity to do a program like this with young people who can ask questions of you and have that interactive conversation. I mentioned that I would have a question or two, just something very quickly. In the Salvation Army, there is rank or there are titles, or how would you um, describe the title that you have with the Salvation Army?
Well, the Salvation Army was founded in 1865 by William Booth. He was the general. He and his wife, Catherine. There are different ranks. There are majors. There are
Yeah.
colonels. But I'm just a soldier. So there are 1,283,000 soldiers throughout the 134 countries that the Salvation Army serves in. Our mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and attend to human needs in his name without discrimination. I
Praise
know of no
God.
other organization that has ever put that in their mission statement. And so I just look for ways to help people. The Salvation Army is soup, soap, valve, salvation.
Wow.
We want to give you something to eat. We want to clean you up. Then we talk to you about salvation.
Praise God. Well, let me
We help because help can't wait.
well let me say to you, that I appreciate all that you are doing, things that you have done. You will be hearing from me soon. But rather than attempt to ask a closing question, you have answered for me in a way that allows me to say this. If I were to have an analogy, I have been blessed to work with and interview veterans. Some of those veterans are back to the Vietnam era. As a matter of fact, my oldest brother was a Marine in South Korea. Well, South and North Korea at the time that it was the Korean War. But if we go back to Korea, Vietnam, if we come up to Desert Storm, if I were to interview one of those veterans today, and the words slipped out, I am just a soldier, let me suggest that America is eternally grateful and doing less than enough for those who have served as, quote, just soldiers, unquote. So in the Salvation Army, if Edward Joseph is just a soldier, I would have to suggest that's more than adequate. Thank you very, 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 very much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. Let us turn it over to DeQuay Wilson.
I would like to thank our guest and our listeners for joining us on your Stutes for Boots Wave Your Grades program. We come to you live every Saturday from 1 until 2 p.m. Central Standard Time from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center right here in Kansas City, Missouri. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now our host, Carl Boyd, will close with Carl's commentary on academic patriotism and his daily message for students in honor of our veterans from his book, Morning Messages.
We have some seconds left between 1:59 and 2 o'clock, so I won't go into Carl's commentary. I will ask you to read my column on why this is my most important election year 2024 in Kansas City. Next page. And as my calendar goes every day, Brother Edward Joseph, I have 366 messages for students, and it goes something like this. To students across the USA, your Stutes for Boots message for this day, March 23rd. Think it not strange to see students change when touched by the heart of a hero. My name is Carl Boyd, thanking Edward Joseph. God bless you, just a soldier. Gracious God and wonderful Wanda.